Hello again, everyone. Michael Vosbein at Crescent Cymbals Studio A, and today I have with me from Birmingham, Alabama, Mark Lanter. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're going to explore who you are, introduce you to everybody, and first, thank you for coming. We like when guys make the pilgrimage. That's not too far away. Come and pick out some pies and hang out and have some fun with us.
Well, I've been looking forward to coming for a long time.
Well, you've been with us for a while, and we sure do appreciate that. You have what I think is the best of all worlds going on, in that in and around Birmingham, you play gigs, right?
Right.
Outside of Birmingham, in the regional or global setting, you run out and do gigs with other people.
Correct.
On a larger setting. And you teach at 2 universities.
And at home.
And at home.
Right.
So we're going to explore each one of those. But that's a man that's got some stuff going on.
All right.
So let's go way back. Where are you from?
Okay, originally, I was born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So I'm a Tennessean at heart. And spent part of my childhood there. And then our family moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama in 1968. So the rest of my childhood in Tuscaloosa.
Alabama boy.
Yes.
So you grew up hearing that music?
That's right.
Muscle Shoals and...
Pretty much the dominant influence was Capricorn, so Macon and everything that was going on there, whether it was the Allman Brothers or everything from Muscle Shoals. So that was the heavy emphasis, and that's what bands were playing, and that's what I was expected to do.
Now, I know you teach at some universities, so you must have some schooling behind you. Where'd you go to school?
Right. Well, I went to the University of Alabama out of high school, and was sort of in and out of school, I guess you could say, because I would go a semester or two and get a gig, go on the road for 6 months or a year, get burnt out, go back to school.
The call of the road is more romantic when you're a young man.
Yes, so I think I did that 2 or 3 times until eventually the Steve Sample, the jazz ensemble director, said, if you leave again, you can't come back. And I was gone for quite a number of years at that point, so I went on the road yet again. So
you have a master's too?
Right, and I have a master's from there as well. So that I got later when I came back to school after being on the road for a lot of years.
If you're serious as an educator, eventually it's something you need to get under your belt, in your pocket, as a master's degree.
It helps, and as a matter of fact, it's required, at least at the University of Alabama, to at least have a master's to teach.
So you teach where now?
Okay, so I teach at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and I'm the jazz studies drum set instructor, and I've taught everything from jazz history to jazz theory, arranging. I've directed ensembles, and right now just private lessons. I also teach at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I'm teaching my own online course that I've designed there.
We'll get to the online course in a second. I wanted to ask you, I've had the privilege of, on a couple of occasions, at a university or a continuing ed setting, to teach jazz history. And once it was 3 hours a week for 2 semesters. And I began by thinking, how can I ever fill this time? And I ended up thinking, how can I ever get this material covered? So as a drummer, you probably learn most of your jazz history from liner notes. And then when you teach it, you learn a lot more, right?
Yes, and again, it's almost like the hits, if you will. You have to go with, I guess, the most prominent names in that sort of setting, because you've got to get it in a semester. It could easily be 2 semesters worth to do it thoroughly.
But don't you feel you really get involved in that music more than ever before?
Oh, yes.
You just love it?
Not to mention Ken Burns' series is a good helper for that. So.
And they used to have the Smithsonian collection of classic jazz.
Right.
It was pretty hip too. And the textbooks, did you use Gridley? Or?
I did use Gridley. So his seemed to be the best, even though there's a lot of stuff out there. There's so much. It's hard to discern what to use, but
well, we share that common history of
good.
teaching jazz history and enjoying the hell out of it. Okay, so you're teaching at those universities. Now, how about your playing? What do you do locally around Birmingham?
Okay, I don't play as much locally anymore. I do a fair amount of traveling, but it's all hit and run. So lots of long weekends and occasionally a week tour or something somewhere. But I have my own groups that I perform with fairly regularly. And I play with a musical entity, I'll call it, organization called the Black Jacket Symphony. And I've been doing that the last 5 years. And
what kind of music is that?
Okay,
without pigeonholing it.
Okay, what the Black Jacket Symphony does is replicate classic albums. So, in other words, it's not a band tribute, but it's a group, an organization that hires musicians to perform an album in its entirety, and that's the slogan's note for note, sound for sound. So, for instance, I've done 22 albums with them. We'll take on an album like the Beatles' White Album and learn every song note for note, using samples, using orchestras at time. We've done Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, for instance, with a symphony orchestra live, which is quite an experience.
Very cool. Now, your challenge is to cop it note for note.
Yes. So my job is to transcribe and try to get as close as I can to the sound of the artist. Like we've done Zeppelin albums. I went out and bought a Vista Light kit, and he's one of my favorite drummers. Get to pretend I'm John Bonham. And
well, how cool is that? So you're deep inside the music, man.
It's very cool.
It's exactly what they played. It's the sounds they played. It's the tunes they played. It's the orchestrations.
Yes,
it's everything.
And it's hiring the singers, and I actually sing quite a bit in that
You sing well too?
I do.
I'm
a good rock singer.
Not good. I'm just kidding.
But I'm terrible on piano, so
All right, we can't do everything.
Enough to feel bad about.
I mean, you're playing, you're gigging, you're teaching, and you sing.
Yes. So
all right.
That's where all the big bucks are.
Good for you. I'm happy for you. I'm just giving you a hard time. Okay, so now you do some regional things too. That would be this.
Yeah. So the Black Jacket Symphony has quite a circuit, and pretty much playing a theater circuit, 1,000 to 2,000 seater halls, and packing them out. And this is all over the Southeast, and it's growing, that circuit. So this is actually a project that's taken off a bit. So
fantastic. Now, as a younger man, you did the record label thing, right?
Right.
Well, tell me about that.
Well, many years on the road, especially through my 20s, and stayed on the road 10 months out of the year, and with a particular group that morphed eventually into one that got a record deal. So at one point,
what was that group?
That at the time it was called Vova Nova, and that was in the late 80s, early 90s. A band that was once upon a time a sort of a fusion band made its way to sounding kind of like a grunge band.
It had a different name though, right?
Right. It was Forecast, and
I remember that name.
Right, and it was the Forecast in the '70s, even before I joined them. Sort of generic name, playoff weather report. Go figure. Right. And then it morphed into the Cast, and then it became Vova Nova somehow, and some of the same core, but we had quite a circuit in the Southeast again, and
but you survived that whole thing of, man, you got a record deal.
Right.
You got it made now. To turn into what it always degenerates into some kind of nightmare. Did you have that happen?
It wasn't very much fun. As a matter of fact, that was a low point in my so-called career as a musician, was having a major recording contract. It wasn't what I thought. Once upon a time, I thought that was the answer. I'm sure a lot of musicians did at that time. Like, if I could just get a hit record. I think I had a kid, a young child at the time, was like, I got to do something. Better get a hit record. And so I kind of went that way. And it was really quite a fiasco. And there weren't many good times out of that. There was a couple of good shows, and maybe riding around in a limousine in New York was fun for a few days, but even that got old. So
those days have changed,
right?
Many times for good reason,
right?
But speaking of changing and keeping up with the times, now I know you're doing online education now, right?
Yes.
That's a new challenge.
That's a new challenge.
That's teaching some old dogs new tricks, right?
I was thinking old dog before you said it. So
well, I do the same thing. That's what this is.
Quite intimidating at first, but again, have an opportunity as a musician to do different things. I mean, I think of teaching as just another outlet of performance, and you certainly draw on from your performance and musical knowledge to teach classes and things like that.
So what is it? What do you have? Explain the program.
This is a hybrid music appreciation course that I sort of flippant sort of request to the chair at UAB. Said, hey, if you ever want me to teach that Beatles class we used to talk about, and I actually had the opportunity. So in the books, it's a music appreciation class, but it's a certain section that they're allowing me to do my own version, and it's music appreciation with the Beatles, a new approach, and it's published this past summer on Kindle Hunt, and I've just had my first fully online class that I designed, and looking at a bunch of students here starting Monday.
Excellent, brother. Now, where do we find that online?
Okay, well, I guess you'd have to be enrolled in the course at this point.
Where does one enroll?
At UAB. So,
so right now it's through UAB.
Yes, and there's distant learning available. So I've had students in Oregon and North California and Washington, D.C., and it doesn't really matter, in Florida, wherever. So it's a real interesting process to teach classes to people who you never see their face.
Right, that's interesting. Well, we'll post up some stuff at the tail end of the video of how people can contact you.